We're having open and honest conversations about mental health and well-being. We should talk about it with Maira Ansari on Wave Now.
Hello and good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here on our podcast, We Should Talk About It. I'm Maira Ansari with Dr. Stephen Taylor from UofL Health Peace Hospital. Happy New Year to you all. I hope that so far we are 8 days into the new year. Hopefully things are going peaceful for you. How's your new year going?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. I feel like it's been a crazy, hectic already 2024. And when we were typing it out, we were like, that looks so funny, but that's where we're at. All right. So, I was actually thinking about this on my drive-in today because I started this new workout routine, Dr. Taylor, where every day I get up and I try to do 30 minutes of exercise. And today is focusing on eating better with the exercise. But then I was like, where does mental health kind of go into all of that? Because I want that to be a New Year's resolution as well, to kind of focus on my mental health and getting to a better place for myself. So if that is a goal of yours, or if you're still trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do this year? What do I want to focus on? If mental health is something that you want to prioritize, Dr. Taylor is here to tell us how to get there in a better path, a better, more successful way to see results.
Well, what you were saying about prioritizing exercise and taking care of yourself physically, that also connects to and relates to mental health as well. So it's not just
one thing.
Yeah, it's not just one thing, right? You're not just eating better because you want to eat better. You're not just exercising because you want to exercise. Those things are connected to your mental health as well because you feel better. They mean something. You feel better about yourself. Your self-esteem improves when you do those things to take care of yourself. So I think it's just built into all the framework of all of our New Year's resolutions is our mental health. So being aware of it and focusing on it, I think will help us be more successful at those things too.
So we're talking about mental health so much more now. It's funny because I typed in just before our podcast, mental health news, and almost every news agency had a separate tab to focus on mental health because it's so important for so many people. But when you say, I just want to be better, happier mentally, that's a big, broad thing to throw out. So how do you get there? How do you sustain being there? And it's a big goal to achieve.
It is a big goal. There's a lot to it. The mind is complicated. The way our mind is constructed is complicated. And the needs of our minds are also very complicated. And so, part of our focus for mental health is being aware of, what are the things that our minds want in order to live in this world anyway? And if we think about those things and maybe make those part of our priority, that's going to help us. If we go all the way back to the very beginning, Freud essentially said the goal of the mind is to work and to love. Those are the goals of the mind. So those are simple ones there. To find meaning in work and to find meaning in relationship. Those are two fundamental principles of how our minds work. And if we're focusing on those or moving towards those things, that's going to help our mental health.
Okay, so I'm thinking focusing. So, all right, how do I find better mental clarity when I'm at work? Work is stressful. It stresses me out. I walk in frazzled. I leave upset, and you got to do it again in just a matter of hours. Yeah. And then you go home and you're dealing with the mental stressors of perhaps being in a relationship. You have children. How do you navigate all of those different lanes and think, okay, how do I mentally get to a better place at work when I get home, when I'm dealing with the kids?
Right.
Or is it you just take one thing at a time and try to perfect that? How do you tackle that?
Well, you can take one thing at a time to be sure. But, is your work meaningful? That's the first piece of it. Do you find meaning in that? Is the work that you do meaningful? We here in Kentucky, we live near the Shaker Village, in Pleasant Hill. And if you've ever done the tour there, one of the things you find, and a lot of these utopian societies kind of share this notion, and I think there's something we can take away from it that's valuable, which is they don't see any work as being meaningless. So if your job for the day is to wash the clothes, or if your job for the day is to feed the cows, or whatever it is, it's all meaningful. It all has value.
So is it changing your perspective on the work that you do instead of saying, oh, I got to wash the clothes.
Right.
Oh, I got to feed the cows. Like trying to change your perspective on it?
Finding some way to find meaning in those things.
Okay.
Maybe that's one of the things that can help us. Is there something meaningful about what you do?
Mm-hmm.
Is your work meaningful? It can be exasperating. It can be tense. It can require you to be on and be focused a lot of the time and to be present in things that you don't necessarily want to be present in. But through all that, is it meaningful anyway? Is the work meaningful?
Okay.
So
changing your perspective on it. I can kind of relate to that. I went through a rough patch, and I was just like, all the housework was getting on my nerves, everything that I had to do. But then I was like, okay, I had to really like have a come to, for lack of better words of saying it, come to Jesus moment, like being like, okay, I have a family to take care of, and I'm grateful for that.
Right. Maybe it's meaningful to you to be able to do something that shows them that you're taking care of them or providing for them. Those things can be meaningful. I mean, I don't want to reduce the complexity of our minds to such a simple formula, but I do think that that's part of what can help us with our mental health. If we can find meaning in what we do, or if we understand why we do what we do, that can be a step in our beginning to work towards what's going to improve our mental health. We do the things that we do for a reason. We engage in the things we engage in for a reason. And if we can understand why we do what we do, that'll be a step closer to figuring out how we improve our mental health and improve our situation, because we understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Does improving your mental health mean I'm going to find a therapist and I'm finally going to talk to somebody? Or is it just doing things on your own?
Yes, it could be both.
Okay.
It could be either. But yeah, for sure, having a therapist, having somebody you can talk to talk about what's going on in your life and in your world, but somebody who doesn't necessarily have the investment in your personal relationship with them that may cloud how they see you or what they think about what's going on with you, because they may have their neutral view may give them more insight into what's going on with you than if they are your best friend who is your best friend. I mean, they're invested in you as a person on that level where they're going to side with you. They're always going to side with you because they're your best friend.
Yeah, that's true.
That's part of what happens with best friends. But your therapist may be able to step back and say, what you're saying isn't really working for you. And whereas our best friend may not do that.
That's very true.
You know what we're saying? So there's a little bit of a difference there. Not that you don't have a real relationship with your therapist, but it's a different kind of relationship.
Yeah.
And it's one that gives a kind of perspective that you may not get in any of your other relationships.
Their job is to be honest with you and to help you, and sometimes your friends may, be worried, I'm going to hurt your feelings if I say this. And I don't want to jeopardize our relationship.
Right.
So that's why maybe getting someone, a new ear to listen to can be really helpful.
Right.
Okay. So how do you sustain prioritizing mental health throughout the year? Because we're just getting started. So if today is your goal to get started, maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself the 30 minutes in the day that I need. I'm going to leave the BS at work when I walk out the door, right? Or how do you keep that momentum going all year long?
I think if it's part of your short-term goal, if it's part of your midterm goal, and if it's part of your long-term goal, then I think it creates a kind of trajectory that you're always going to be focused on. If everything I do, I consider as being part of my attention and focus on my mental health, then I will find myself moving in that direction because everything has that as its foundation. So, is buying a new car this year going to stress me out? Is that going to make me feel more tense? Do I really need it?
Mm-hmm.
Or is driving my old car driving me nuts because it's always breaking down and I'm in a position where I can buy a new car? If I'm thinking about those things and at the same time thinking, what is this going to do to my mental health? Then I think that's going to help guide me in the decisions that I make and in the directions that I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the year I'm going to get a new mortgage? What's that going to do to my mental health?
Yeah.
How am I going to feel about that? Is this the year I give up the job that I'm working on and going to do something new? How's that going to affect me mentally? And why am I doing what I'm doing now? How is it serving my mental health needs now? If I'm always thinking that, maybe that's going to help guide me and keep that as a guiding force.
That's kind of ironic that you gave that analogy. This is totally kind of going in that direction, but my husband had been thinking about getting an electric vehicle for a while, but he's been doing so much research on it. And then I guess he found a study that how people they're finding people with electric vehicles are stressing out a lot because they don't know when their next charging station is going to be available. And if you can get in there, and the mental stress of coming along with, you think you got this electric vehicle and you're going to be saving on gas. Well, you're worried about where you're going to charge. And then that's the whole other stressor. I know it sounds silly, but when you have a crazy, hectic life, do you really need to pile on something like that in your life right now?
And how long am I going to spend at the charging station?
Yes.
And do I have that kind of time?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody is going to make these choices for their own reasons with their own life considerations. But if those are considerations for you and they are going to stress you out, how much is that helping you?
Exactly. So if you can identify, I guess, a stressor in your life, something that is just going to, going to visit this aunt is just going to do a number on me. How can I mentally prepare myself to go be with her, but also focus on my mental health, trying to figure out where to draw the line and where to kind of.
Those are all decisions everyone has to make and you all have to make for yourselves. But I think that's a way to think about it. What's this do to my mental health and why am I thinking about this and why am I considering it?
Is that selfish?
No, I think it's reality. It's a way of understanding how we are driven. We're all driven to do particular things to satisfy our staying alive as human beings. We all want to work. We all want to love. We all want to be in groups that protect us. We all want to play. We all feel a drive to nurture. We all feel a drive to be taken care of. Those are things that are just innate in all of us as human beings. And our minds are busy trying to get those things to happen, whether we're paying attention to it or not.
Yeah. And just to keep in mind, your path to getting to a better place mentally, my path and your path are not the same.
Right.
They're different.
They're different paths, but our minds are trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to find those things and satisfy those needs. And if we can be mindful of that and try to understand why we're doing the things that we're doing and trying to understand that from what needs are these things that I'm doing trying to satisfy, then maybe we can work on satisfying those needs and change the behavior so that we're doing something different with the end goal that's still trying to meet the needs that the other thing was trying to meet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I'm overeating, well, why am I overeating? Is it because I feel lonely? Is it because I'm feeling uncomfortable? I feel like not eating is like being poor. And that reminded me when I was a kid and we didn't have food and money, to be able to think about those things and understand why am I doing this behavior? Then you can focus on the emotional need and you can change the behavior. But I don't think the behavior can change until we understand what the emotional need is underneath it.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So you will not know why you're doing or reacting a certain way until you understand maybe the history that goes along with that action. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And so back to your original question, do I need a therapist or can I do this on my own? Maybe part of the answer to that question is what do I need to think through these things? Am I thinking it through and am I making sense on my own and getting there? That's great. Do I need a therapist to help me think it through and work on what is it that's making me do what I'm doing? And then how can we change that?
Okay.
Therapy can help with that too.
What am I not asking you, Dr. Taylor? If mental health is your goal this year and you want to sustain it, anything else that you can advise folks to do?
Well, I would just sort of underline what we've been talking about and how important it is that everything that we're doing is being done towards some emotional need end goal. And if we can begin to think about what those are and why we're doing the things that we're doing, that's going to give us so much more power to unravel those things and change them. And they're all focusing on our mental health because our mental health is underneath everything that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And you are worth that end goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Happy New Year to you all. Thank you so much for joining us here on We Should Talk About It with Dr. Stephen Taylor. I hope that you all gained a little something. I know I did. And we will chat again soon. Have a great day.